Hey boys and girls, it's KnightStalker here. Welcome along today to today's video on ranged units and tier lists. Check it out, man. So a couple of things before we get started. Today we're going to rate them up here on a strong unit or in meta, so we'll lump those all in together. We're going to rate them on good for its leadership cost. Now good for its leadership cost means the relatively decent performers. You could take them in most battles and do relatively well with them. But bear in mind that you're going to get two units on the same tier. You might even get a blue tier and a gold tier on the same level. Now that doesn't mean that those two units are as good as each other. It's relative to their leadership cost, okay? So when you see like Prefecture archers being placed good for its leadership cost next to, I don't know, let's say the gold crossbows, that doesn't mean that those are going to perform the same. It means that both of those units are going to be good for their leadership cost. We're going to put performs poorly or play for fun only down here. And then specialist. Specialist is not the last tier. It means that it has a special use that it doesn't really fit into the ranking system. And we'll talk about those as we go. Now each of these little units, I'm going to give you a little brief description about the unit, what I think about it, and then I'm going to place it up the top. This video is intended for newer players really to think about what sort of units they might like to pick going forward, what they might like to work towards, because these days it's not easy to go through all these unit grinds, and very few people are going to be able to get every unit in the game. So this might help you make some choices around that. If you're a veteran player, I'd love to hear your respectful and polite opinions. Please put them in the comments below, especially if you've got some more to say about a particular unit or you think I've misplaced it slightly. Tell us why. Give us a bit of background. And hopefully that information will be useful to the newer players as well. And newer players, read those comments, man. A lot of people have some great things to say on these videos. Okay, so without further ado, let's go and get started, shall we? Okay, so starting at A. A for Archer Militia. Now, this is very strange to start with a peasant unit and a ranged unit, and I'm going to say it's good for its leadership cost. Oh my goodness, KnightStalker, why would you say such a silly thing about Archer Militia? Well, if you've watched my videos that include Archer Militia, you will know why. This unit is only 75 leadership, so that's very, very cheap. They have a lot of soldiers in the unit, and they ping even gold units or purple units for about 600, 700 damage, maybe a little bit lower if it's a super heavy like a Reaper or something like that. It'll end up doing minimum damage. But the real use of this unit is that heroes will dive on it to try and kill it. They'll simply see an archer unit and try and dive on it, which can often get them killed. People will shoot trebuchet and artillery shots at it. And if you can get this unit trebucheted a couple of times, because it's a nice spread out unit, and it has a lot of men and a lot of soldiers in the unit. If you can take 2 trebuchets or even 1 trebuchet on this unit, it's paid for itself. Trust. And it's just such a good bait unit. And even if people ignore it, you know, there's 30 plus guys on this unit picking away for 500, 600, 700 damage to the front line. In terms of 75 leadership costs, this unit is great, absolutely fantastic. I've got several videos with this unit in it that you can go back and watch if you don't believe me. But it's good for its leadership cost. That doesn't mean it's an amazing unit. Let's be clear. All right. So. But you could even put it in specialist. You know, what's its purpose? To draw heroes and trebuchets. Fun. But it also does quite significant damage for white tier unit. You know, much better than... I'd prefer this unit over the Domain Pikemen, for example. Moving on, the Black Dragon Archers. Now this is a mercenary unit that you buy with silver or real money, and it is the worst of the lot. There is no mercenary unit that's worse than... Oh, no, I lie. There is one worse, and we'll talk about it in a minute. This is a terrible unit, but it is the cheapest. Sorry, it is the cheapest of all the mercenary units. Now, if you include a mercenary unit in your warband, you don't have to take it out and fight with it, but as long as it's in your roster for the battle, you'll get 10% extra unit experience, 10% extra hero experience, 10% extra bronze, 10% extra honor, I believe it is. So just by having one of these units in your warband, you'll be successful. Now, this is 110 leadership, where like the Matella Lori, the Hammer Bros, are only 30. And it has a poison attack. It's terrible. It absolutely is terrible. You'll be super disappointed with this unit. I would prefer this unit over this unit any day of the week. 10 times out of 10, I would pick Archer Militia over this unit. Despite its bonuses for being a mercenary unit, it's just bad. And I see a lot of people buy this unit because it is the cheapest cost in silver of all the mercenary units. You'll be very, very disappointed and you won't want to use it. So don't go there. Okay, Domain Obelisks. Now the Domain Obelisks here are one of the options for the Chevaliers. The tier 5 gold tier cavalry is a retinue to the unit. So when you take that tier 5 cavalry, you actually get a second unit to come along with it, and it's just recently been nerfed. It was my one of choice, my crossbow unit of choice over the domain crossbows, domain obelisks, domain crossbows, not to be confused. But after all the changes, these guys are actually better, although they have a much worse wider open formation. So it's a little bit debatable in my mind. But the other thing is that these guys will, on the bottom veterancy line, will absolutely smash heroes that overextend. They're not good against shields at all. Heavy armor users don't take a lot of damage from them. So where would I put them? They're no longer the pick of choice for the Chevaliers, so we won't put them in specialist. But they absolutely, I swear, they absolutely hammer heroes who stick their necks out. I like this unit. I might be a little bit biased. I don't think it performs poorly. I'm going to put it in good for its leadership cost. That's a bit contentious. If anyone's got any comments on the Domain Obelisk there, you know, it's not something I would push new players towards at all. And that light, actually, in that vein, I'll put them in performs poorly. This unit, you can crank out some really good special plays with. It's not something I would push anyone towards as a good unit. The Domain Castle Archers. There's not much to say about this. They're low damage, low health. They don't have anything really special about them. And this is kind of the problem with most archers. I'll just take a break from the tier list for a moment to tell you that archers in Conquerors Blade are typically not good. The way that they fight is so far away from the meta that you might as well take muskets in 9 out of 10 cases, right? And that's kind of just my opinion. Veterans, do you have a different opinion? Please put it respectfully, politely, in the comments below. And hopefully we can have a bit more of a discussion about that. But typically, you won't want to be taking a lot of archers when you're playing this game. There are some exceptions, and we'll talk about them as we get to them. So, these guys are just no good. Nobody uses this unit. Absolutely nobody. Next we have the Domain Arquebusiers. Now, this unit, there's something wrong with it, and I can't put my finger on it. There are 3 actions to muskets. There is load, aim, and fire. This unit takes a long time for all of them. It doesn't have great accuracy unless you're at point blank range. Like, if a unit's fighting 5 meters in front of you, well, it's going to be doing as much damage as any other musket unit. But just its utility, and it's kind of finicky, and I just can't put my finger on why. I wouldn't take it. It's not a unit I recommend at all. Play for fun only. If you end up finding this in the Mercenaries tab, that you could take it for the week, have a go with it and you'll see what I mean. There's just something feels wrong about them. They just don't perform as you'd expect a musket unit to perform. So, Domain Crossbows. So these guys are almost exclusively a retinue for the tier 5 Chevaliers. I can't think of a reason to use them otherwise. I do have a guide on this unit, weirdly enough, from 2 years ago. And they can actually put out a lot of damage. But the thing that takes them to the next tier is the bonuses they get from playing with the Chevaliers. I wouldn't take this unit on its own, although it's pretty good against bots. If you find yourself, under level 100, you'll be playing a lot of bots. This unit will devastate bot units. Specialist unit. It's only really typically used with the tier 5 Chevalier Knights. So here we go. This is what I call the Falcon newbies. The Falconetti gunners. This unit annoys the hell out of me, and if you've watched any number of my videos, you'll know why. It just annoys the hell out of me. It can get a lot of kills if you set them up right. Typically, this will be used for a special purpose, such as denying a supply point, such as taking down a siege tower, such as clearing a point. And although they can do a lot of damage on their own, their real strength is that anything hit by their cannonballs gets knocked down, gets instantly CC'd. And when you've got, 10 of these cannonballs raining down all around you on a supply point, or a capture point, you know, even something like a short sword or a long sword, they need to be on their feet to use their abilities and shield. So this unit is absolutely devastating when played right. People will spend a lot of time learning the angles because they have a very, very long range with a very high arc. And you can put them on some supply points and target like the end point, for example, and it causes absolute chaos there. You have to spend a lot of energy to knock them out. So I'm going to call them a specialist unit, although you could also put them in strong unit or in meta, but they have a special purpose typically. If you're just going to try and take them out and push with your team and get kills, this is not what this unit's about at all. So if you're feeling fancy, you want to learn a lot about the maps, the angles from supply points to capture points, from I don't know, spawn points through to push points. If you really want to go in that deep, this unit is fantastic. I absolutely hate it because it's fantastic. I hope that makes sense. I hate playing against it, but I also don't like typically playing them either because you are well out of the battle while you're defending them. I wouldn't push new players towards them for their first couple of gold tier units, not at all. But they are a fantastic unit and they have a very special purpose that is very, very effective. Alright, Scree, the Fire Archers. The Fire Archers just this week have got a solid buff. It doesn't make them relevant in my opinion. I've only played a couple of games with them since the buff, but I can't see anything useful for them. Back in the day there used to be a couple of units that were very dominant. One of them was Rattan Rangers, and Rattan units are very vulnerable to fire, so all of us back then we used to take this unit to counter Rattan Rangers specifically. But the number of units these days that are immune to fire, you know, purple and above, just, well, more than most of the gold units and easily more than half of the purple units just don't care about fire. So it makes it very difficult to call this unit useful in any way. Who knows? Maybe we're going to get some fire flammable new units somewhere around that somehow this becomes the counter for. I don't see them becoming relevant. I wouldn't recommend anyone take this one, except for fun. It is kind of fun when you're low tiers to shoot flaming arrows at things because they freak out and it breaks up their formations, and it can be annoying to heroes who have to execute a roll to put the fire out, but realistically, they perform poorly. Flamey boys, flamey boys. This unit is fantastic. It stops even flame-resistant units in their tracks. It can do absolutely stonking huge damage when enemy are concentrated through a point. Man, these boys can be absolutely devastating. They are very tricky to use. You've got to be so aware. You've got to be really understanding the flow of the battle in the game. But especially if you can set them up behind shields or, you know, huge blocks of meat in front of you, i.e. your friendly troops, this unit is utterly devastating. It has a couple of odd little quirks, so if you are going to go down the tech line and get these guys, watch a couple of videos on them first about how to place the targeting for the two abilities that they have. Those two abilities also can be done at the same time, strangely. Very, very devastating unit, very tricky to use. So, the Janissaries. Janissaries have big old bullets and massive stopping power, huge damage, great accuracy. The biggest thing that's a negative is that they're static, very static. They can't move around very easily because when they move into position, they get out their sticks to put their guns on, then they put their guns on there, and then if you want to move them away again, they have to take their gun off the stick, they have to pick up their stick, and then they start moving. And they're not very fast either. So they're very, very vulnerable, but in strong defensive positions, these guys are really good. Really, really good. I wouldn't say that they're a strong unit, but I would say they are absolutely good for their leadership costs. Very well worthwhile if you're a new player getting these guys because they don't require any micro. They're a set and forget unit, and they can just be absolutely devastating in the right scenarios. Houndsmen. Now, I see some comments on Reddit and some of the comments in the threads that people really struggle with this unit. It's a good unit. It's a very, very good unit. Super strong. If you understand the flow of the game, I just point out that the resource, the dogs, drains over time because people kill the dogs, and they've got a very, very short range. So this unit is tricky to use correctly. You're not going to get anywhere sitting behind your rest of your units just shooting into a melee. You're not going to get anywhere just shooting into shield formations and things like that. It's a high micro unit. You've got to be controlling the unit the whole time and doing almost nothing with your hero. But when used correctly, this unit is utterly devastating. It can annihilate whole squads of ranged in a few seconds. It can stop cavalry charges. It can pin whole groups of heroes to the ground so that they can't move. The utility of this unit is fantastic. I'm not going to say it's meta. It's a very tricky unit to use, but I'm going to put it up here in strong unit. If you know what you're doing with this unit, you can just be an absolute god. So, Imperial Archers. Imperial Archers had a slight change, a mechanic change, and a little bit of a buff in the most recent patch. So now their bodkin arrows isn't like a turn off, turn on thing like it used to be. It's now a cooldown ability. So you're shooting your arrows, you hit your number 2 button and they start shooting volleys of super high penetration, super deadly arrows. And this is one of the few archer units in the game that I'll call useful. And the reason for that is, if a hero stops even for a moment and takes a volley from this unit, I don't care if you're a longsword or a shortsword, you are dead. Very, very dead. They can be utterly devastating to heroes and high armoured units. The vulnerabilities are such that if a hero gets into them, they'll kill them pretty easily. So this is not a super strong unit. It's certainly not a meta unit, but I would call this one good for its leadership cost, and I don't think many people would be disappointed with this unit as an archer. If you think about archers, a good archer unit in the game that performs well, this is kind of like the gold standard, the stock standard of archers. I don't have a problem with this unit. I see several people saying that they have issues targeting with them. I don't know why. Imperial Arquebusiers. So, this used to be the highest DPS unit in the game, and I think after its new tweaks it still retains that title. They have a couple little quirks about how they fire, so if you wanted to pop side to side and stutter step them, they can do pretty well with that. They're reasonably accurate. But their big deal is that they have what's called a volley fire mode, where they set out in 3 ranks and they blast away in 3 ranks, like say a redcoat unit, like a redcoat musket unit. And anything standing in front of this unit that doesn't have a shield will be shredded, absolutely shredded. Downside, of course, is one musket bomb, you lose your whole unit. So, hey, take your pick whether you want to do that. Do I think it's good? Do I think it performs poorly? No, I don't think it performs poorly. I think it's hard to use. I'm going to say that this one is good for its leadership cost. Question mark. It may be slipping down into this tier. Who knows? You don't see many of them on the battlefield, right? So that kind of indicates that perhaps they're not quite well enough placed. Iron Cap Archers. Another low green tier archer with nothing special about it, that does low damage and has no hit points. It just performs poorly. It just does. They can have a fire attack. That is possible in the veterancy line if you wanted to try it out for fun, but they're just not so good. So 145 leadership for our Iron Cap muskets. Now this unit, if you move the unit to the left, use the 1 key and fire. Use the movement unit to the right, use the 1 key and fire. This unit will put out a horrendous amount of damage. It just isn't so accurate. But at 145 leadership, I'm going to put this one here, and good for its leadership. I like using this unit, even at high tiers, if I've got just a little bit of spare leadership lying around. And I think it's a relatively good unit. If you want to go and look at any of my my videos about that have this unit in it, you'll see it pretty quick. I've also done a unit guide on them. The most recent one was called General Tips for New Players or something like that. It came out maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before this video did, and it shows how to use that unit with the stutter stepping there. Good for its leadership cost, 145. Not an amazing unit, doesn't compare to these or these, you know, but for its leadership cost, it's good. It's a solid one. Criegsrat Fusiliers. Criegsrat Fusiliers are extremely accurate, have an extremely high rate of fire, and are very tough. This unit is newbie proof. Honestly, this is fantastic. I would recommend this to any new player who wants to play a ranged unit. Their only downside is they don't have a lot of ammunition. So what? They're relatively quick and they can run back to the supply point. The other thing about them is they have a bayonet on the end of their musket, and that bayonet hurts a lot. You can, if a hero dives into this unit, they're taking a risk. So this is a fantastic unit, just based on its. It doesn't have anything special about it in terms of special moves, but it fires very fast, it fires very accurately, and it can fight a melee at a pinch. You're only going to beat peasants or a lone hero. You're not going to beat other melee units. Don't misunderstand me here. But this unit is newbie proof. If you're under level 300 and you want a ranged unit, whew, these guys are great. You won't be disappointed in getting them. Okay, so domain, peasant, militia archers, I think they are. Same sort of thing as these guys. They do a little bit less damage, interestingly. They cost more as well. These are useful for drawing tread fire and drawing heroes. These guys are kind of the same, but they cost more. So we're just going to straight up put them in performs poorly. If you're going to do the things I talked about with this unit, you might as well take this one instead of this one, because this one's just cost less. Longbows. Drum roll, please. Now, I often talk about longbows, and people can be very upset by how I talk about longbows. But longbows are a bad unit. They are a bad unit. There, I said it again. And I'm not backing down on this. They are a bad unit even after their buffs. Are they better than they were after their very recent last couple of weeks buffs? Yes, they absolutely are. And they're not completely and utterly useless anymore. But they are a bad unit. If you're going to babysit your archers, you are going to be well out of the battle for this unit. You can't follow the flow of the battle. You can't even keep up with your team if they're pushing. The things that people claim that they're specialised at fighting against, which is other archers, typically, you don't see them. Think how often you see archers on the battlefield. You just don't. Even if you're going to try and use them to snipe off, say, Shinjis, the Shinjis and Tertios and things that are worth their salt have a lot of hit points and armour, and these guys just don't do enough damage. You might push them out of position because people don't want to risk losing their unit, but realistically, they have very low DPS. They can only shoot things that are completely stationary. Shields of any kind nullify them completely. They keep your hero well off the battle path. If you're going to choose archers, go ahead and grab these guys or some of the other ones that I'm about to talk to you about. Unequivocally, in my mind, at least in my opinion, this is a bad unit. I do not recommend it. Despite how cool they are in history, despite how cool they are in movies, I want to love them. I can't. They're the red-headed stepchild. Red-headed stepchild of archers. That's what they are. Right, moving on. Namkhans. Namkhans used to be the premier archer in the entire game, even though they're tier blue. These days, they're just an annoyance. They can still catch heroes off guard with their bleed, because their bleed, we can't stack as much as it used to. And now we get bandages that anti-bleed, and we get abilities that heal us outside of the actual bandage and things. So these guys are good against seriously heavy armour, like, let's say, Iron Reapers, but, there are better options for dealing with Iron Reapers than Namkhan archers. These guys kind of more these days are area denial, because I won't willingly take my unit into an area being shot at by Namkhan archers, because even though they might not kill many, those bleed ticks and things do add up pretty quick, and it'll seriously weaken your unit. So where does it go? Where does it go these days? They don't have enough punching power anymore, I don't think. I can't remember the last time I saw one in a battle. I'm going to have to put them in performs poorly. But keep in mind as well that I play at very, very high tiers. We don't see new players at all up there. We don't even see mid-range players. So there may be some utility. They're very easy to get as one of the bonuses. So they're pretty good at shooting things that don't have shields. And they're pretty good at whittling down things that have heavy armour. Your call. I think they're play for fun. I don't think they're performs poorly, but I do think they're a play for fun only these days. Crossbows. So the crossbows are interesting unit. They have a very, very good formation. A very nice tight formation in a line that you can sort of peek around a corner or put them in a doorway or some really tight little spot and have them shoot. They don't track targets very well left to right, which is one of their big weaknesses. But when they do hit like a truck. Like if you're foolish enough to stand still on a point and these guys get a volley at you, you're not going to survive that volley. The other bonuses they have is that as completely underutilized is they are a shield wall as well. If things aren't going good, you've got, you and your two mates turn up and you've all three of you got ranged. Oops. Oh no, we're being shot at. Well, instead of running away, you put up your shield wall and you fire back and you win. They have bolts, a bolt method that stops cavalry. They're pretty good, all things considered. The reason you don't see more of them is because these two are objectively better units. But this unit is really good for its leadership cost. I have no problem recommending it. I do like using the unit myself. Prefecture archers. Now, for a 180, 185 leadership blue tier unit, this unit is utterly deadly. They're just absolute psycho killers. Again, they have the same problem as all other archers. Anything with high armor, anything with a shield, anything that can heal, just won't die to this unit. But anything that is outside of those categories, this unit will whittle down very fast. It has an ability called Arrow Rain that doesn't work like any other unit or the Doctrine's Arrow Rain. It doesn't have a damage reduction on the Arrow Rain. It will increase their range by about 30% while using the Arrow Rain. They will actively track targets that are moving quickly. This unit is very good for its leadership cost and also one of the best archer units in the game. No lies. Only because of its horrendous output, and it moves quickly as well. I recommend this to new players. I do. As you can see, archers typically are not scoring highly in today's meta, and this one here is only because it gets shot well. It does great things for its leadership cost. It dies because people treb it. This one puts out great damage with its bodkins. Oh, excuse me. I just need a quick drink. Just clear my throat with 12-year-old scotch. And this one here is fantastic just in the absolute hail of doom it puts out. So the idea is you run up, unload your hail of doom, run away. Run up, unload your hail of doom, run away. Recommend. Rattan marksmen. Now, Rattan marksmen are the machine guns of the medieval era. You see a lot of these around on the battlefield probably because they're just so cool. They're fun to use, if nothing else. They work just like other crossbow and musket units, except that they have a veterancy line that splits into either fire or bleed. Now, you want to split that into bleed. Fire is great at early levels when things aren't fireproof. The minute you get into most of the things that you're fighting up purple tier and above, the fire drops off horrendously. So it's definitely you want to take the poison line. And all of the doctrines, you want to put them into as much armor penetration as you can to really try and increase their terminally low armor penetration. And if you can do that, well, these guys can be very, very deadly because of the horrendous hail of fire they put out. Even if they only do minimum damage on a hit, they fire 5 or 6 minimum damage hits. They can be really good, especially if you're choosing the right things to target. This unit is good for its leadership cost. Sea Stag Death Dealers. Now, do you remember earlier when we were talking about the Black Dragon Archers and I said they were the worst ranged unit in the game? They're not. This unit is. They also cost either silver or you can purchase them with real money. Just like the other mercenary units, you get the plus 10% experience, plus 10% money, yada yada. Except this unit is the worst unit in the game, bar none. There are no units in the game that are worse than this unit. If you spend your money on this, you will be so sad. If there was a rank underperforms poorly or plays for fun only, they don't perform poorly. They just don't perform at all. And you play this unit, you are not going to have fun. Like they're somewhere down here. I don't know if you can get any further down, but this unit is objectively terrible. Why are they objectively terrible? Because they can't hit anything. Even when they're standing next to it. They cannot hit a barn when they're standing inside it. I'm not joking. Some content creators have done videos on these guys. I have done a mercenary unit video that you could go and watch if you like. It's in the new information for new players playlist. They can't hit anything. The whole unit will fire 3 volleys and the whole unit will get a total of maybe 2 or 3 or 4 hits. They're absolutely rubbish. Do not ever pick this unit. I'm not sure if I've been clear enough. Let's go on. Shinjis are the complete opposite of these guys. These guys are the best ranged unit in the game, bar none. They are utterly overpowered, utterly deadly. Their grenades smash tire armies to the ground. Their volley fire is pinpoint accurate for massive damage. There is nothing bad about this unit whatsoever. They have a little bit of armor, they have good hit points, there's no downside to this unit whatsoever. They are utterly devastating in all states of play. I cannot state that enough. If you want to get a ranged unit, especially if it's a musket unit, this is the one for you. It is totally devastating. So, the complete opposite of its predecessor. Tertios. Tertios used to be a strong unit in meta unit because they had a triple tap. They still do have the triple tap, but that triple tap has been toned down somewhat. Little trick, if you've got this unit already, if you press 5 to put your muskets away and pull out your knives, and then you run up to the enemy, and then you press 5 again to pull your muskets out, you're now locked into musket mode for 5 seconds. So even if you do your triple tap ability, your unit won't put its musket away. It will happily keep shooting. Not sure if it's a bug, not sure it's a feature. It's a perfectly legitimate tactic. So what does this unit do well? It does well because it's got a little bit of armor, a little bit of hit points, and if you can get them in nice and close to a big melee brawl and just let them shoot on their own without interfering with them, so very low micro, you don't need to pay a lot of attention to them, you can wade in with your hero, they will just consistently put out accurate, high damage fire, very consistently over a long period of time. They have a lot of ammunition too, and that's really their strengths. The reason that you don't see many of them anymore is that Shinjis are just so much better than them, and they're a musket unit too, right? This one's going to go in good for its leadership cost. Alright, Vanguard Archers. Now, Vanguard Archers, I did a guide on Vanguard Archers, actually. Somebody, or I think everybody voted for it, and this was the one that got voted for me to do a unit guide on. Same with actually these ones here, the Rattan Vipers. They got voted by the viewers to do that as a unit guide. Evo Loz voted on that one as well, and he made a nice comment that he voted Rattan Archers just because he wanted me to suffer. So anyway, back to Vanguard Archers. Vanguard Archers' special ability is that they can run towards the enemy while shooting. Just a moment of quiet there so you can appreciate how interesting that ability is. They can run towards the enemy while shooting. That's this unit's special ability. And that is all you need to know about this unit. Rattan Vipers. Now, Rattan Vipers are actually a good unit, but not for the reasons that you think. I have a guide on this unit, and I highly recommend that you watch that unit guide, and share with me some thoughts of the comments of that video, along with all the other thoughts that people have shared in the comments of that video. You can set this unit up so that when it does a volley, that heroes will do so little damage that they can't kill the members of this unit. They're a support unit that works by CCing, so not quite immobilizing, but massive slowdown of the enemy, and its poison, or even just its hits and its stacks, mean that it reduces its damage by about 70%. So I've got some nice clips that I've shown of like pikes and spears diving into this unit, not killing any of them and being murdered by the unit. And that's not because the unit spits out high damage, but it's because if they get hit by this unit's ability, they simply can't do any damage to it. And if you imagine setting this unit, another example, Iron Reapers versus Imperial Spearguard, who wins that? Obviously the Iron Reapers, right? They got flails. I've got a nice clip of this unit shooting the Iron Reapers, and then the Imperial Spearguard overwhelming and killing the Iron Reapers. This unit is a fantastic specialist support unit, and I highly recommend you go and watch that video so you can make your own ideas for it. One of the clips that we show at the very start is, for example, these guys shooting a volley into me after they've been hit by a volley from these guys, and they do 300 damage. It's crazy. Very specialised, very useful. If you're trying to pull off some ninja stuff with your team, that could be real fun. The last unit we have today in the ranged infantry section, Zycalian militia, or as everybody calls them, the Bull Boys. In fact, I ran a poll on what people call this unit. Some of the amazing comments that we had on that was fantastic. What people call this: the Bull Boys, the Camel Nuts, the Bomb Chuckers, all sorts of cool names that they had for it. There were a lot of phallic names for them too because of their icon. So let's talk about how effective they are. Can they do damage? Absolutely, they can do mass damage. Can they take damage? No. No, if they catch a cold, they'll die on halfway up the siege ladder. Their biggest benefits is that they do damage over time. They do impact damage, and one of the lines does more damage. One of the lines has a further throw. When you're learning the unit, I would encourage you to try the line with the furthest throw. Just simply because you don't need to get so close, because people will actively target this unit because of what it's capable of. If they have a shield line with some muskets in there and they have pikes, and then you throw a bomb into there, well, you're going to absolutely savage those 3 units. But worse than that is they won't fight back. It's a type of fire that immune units are not immune to. The fire from this unit and the fire from this unit override fireproof skills. It interferes with heroes. It's just a great unit. It's not super strong, but it absolutely is good for its leadership cost. Now, just to quantify back what I was mentioning at the start of the video, that archers are just no good in the current state of the game. I just want to point out to you that there are only 3 archer units, if you include this one, 3 archer units that even made it into the good for its leadership cost. And one of them is there because it's fun to have it hit by trebuchets. You know, these guys do alright, these guys do alright, these guys are a little bit questionable. Archers are not super great in the meta, and that's mostly because people aren't using them right. They're supposed to shoot over walls. They're not supposed to set up behind your team and shoot into the combats. But that's what the meta is at the moment, to keep up with the teams pushing and shoot at closer range. Now, that's just how it is, which is why some of the crossbows made it in quite nicely. But it's typically muskets. Muskets are the ranged meta right now. But anyway, boys and girls, if you have any questions, even if you're watching this video 6 months after I've made it, it sort of comes up on my phone as a text message, so I will get it. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, just put them in the comment section below. If you've made it this far into the video, please give me a big thumbs up like. That certainly helps the algorithm. And again, if you're a veteran and you disagree with me in any way, please politely say so in the comments below and explain to newer players why you would think something is different and how you would play it. Anyway, boys and girls, I hope you learned something new or you just enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for coming to my channel.